education consultant, and arts advocate. For the past 10 years, Elissa has developed programming, written curricula, taught lessons, and mentored teachers in Philadelphia. She specializes in working with adjudicated and Department of Human Services involved student populations. She currently works as a consultant in curriculum development and is a trauma-informed trainer for Lakeside Global Network, where she introduces trauma-informed concepts and techniques to educators across Pennsylvania and New Jersey regions. Before we dive into our goals for today, I'd like to share a bit about Groundwork USA and our Technical Assistance Program. Groundwork USA is a national organization with local roots in 20 communities across the country. We're devoted to changing places, changing systems, and changing lives. Our affiliate Groundwork Trusts on the ground all share a mission as a network, but how we implement each on the ground depends heavily on the local community context, where we respond to local mandates, opportunities, and needs among those in our areas of focus. Those areas tend to be small and mid-sized cities, low to moderate income neighborhoods, communities of color, and all of these can be characterized as environmental justice communities. In general, our work takes shape, as I mentioned, in a variety of ways, but in general, we focus on land reclamation and transformation, along with urban waterway restoration and enhancement. We also run a variety of educational and youth development programs, along with workforce development and job training initiatives that promote environmental stewardship and hands-on learning. We also promote education and youth development and other ways to engage people creatively in their communities to give back and advance to new priorities and opportunities. In terms of systems change, we also provide community assessment and visioning leadership on the ground, mobilize community members to hands-on action, and do advocacy and partnership work as well. We also run a technical assistance program focused on supporting brownfield-affected communities. EPA expects that its grantees will work to expend its grant dollars in ways that honor the Environmental Justice Executive Order from 1992, which is foundational to the establishment of the Brownfields program. Our TA program is assigned by EPA to provide peer support, tools, and strategies to practitioners working to reclaim brownfields for community benefit. As a technical assistance grantee, our assignment from EPA is to ensure equitable development and environmental justice outcomes in the face of redevelopment in brownfield-affected communities. We aim to support grantee expenditure of their dollars in ways that will assure cleanup of brownfields while at the same time providing access to quality new spaces, improved public health, community well-being, and wealth-building opportunities. Our TA work is customized to meet the needs of clients and includes development and delivery of webinars like this one today, as well as practitioner trainings, workshops, tools and white papers, and deliveries of coaching, strategy, and peer support. Our technical assistance is cost-free, and we invite you to visit our website to learn more about it. So this brings us to why we're here today, delivering this webinar to build knowledge and tools and support that we provide and offer those today in your pursuit of equitable development and inclusive planning processes. This work, especially planning that is inclusive for all kinds of residents, can require working in new and different and collaborative ways. I've often referred to this work as pushing boulders uphill because doing outreach and engagement, or anything really, in ways that are new or less conventional means change. And as we know, change for humans who are creatures of habit does not come easy. But this work is worth doing. And so with that, we aim to support and equip practitioners like you so you feel supported in engaging community members creatively, especially those whose voices are typically not heard or sought out. So last year, we held a webinar on our Neighborhood Voices Community Engagement Strategy, and we specifically highlighted technical assistance work we did in Portland, Maine with teens. We've since heard from practitioners that they were requiring additional information, tools, and resources, particularly around curriculum development for teens engaged in this work. So a little bit about our pilot Neighborhood Voices project in Portland, Maine. So the Greater Portland Council of Governments was the client, and they requested our services as a Brownfields area-wide planning grantee in 2015 with the City of Portland. The advisory committee that had been appointed by mayoral and city leadership was rather homogeneous in its membership. Business owners in the area, some representative residents in the neighborhood association, professionals working in housing and community development and youth serving organizations, and all but one person around that table was a white person. And however, the population outside the four walls of that meeting room was approximately 60 to 70% people of color, immigrants, and refugees, particularly from Africa and the Middle East. And citywide, local developers and neighborhood organizations, community groups, and even City Hall itself was having trouble figuring out how to mobilize and best engage these people. Many of them were English language learners, young families, and people who had several jobs. So the request we heard from our client was to design and support a community engagement process that would help the grantee reach beyond the community's familiar faces. And by familiar faces here, I mean the typical white middle to upper class people who frequently attend and participate in public meetings and planning processes. We were wanting to help them engage underrepresented populations in their community who lived in the area-wide planning project focus area, and essentially engage those who are most directly impacted by the area's prevalent brownfield sites, or put another way, those who stand to gain the most from the wave of prosperity that could come following a brownfield cleanup and reuse. At the same time, the client wanted us to help them engage local teens, particularly teens who are immigrants or teens of color, in the process. So we helped Greater Portland Council of Governments in the city view this challenge as an opportunity. And the steps we took with our client and the community youth along the way, and the partnerships and materials we created with them in designing and implementing a Neighborhood Voices project for the East Bayside neighborhood, inform and are the bedrock of the curriculum you see here today. And now I'll hand it off to Alyssa for a little bit of a deeper dive into today's content.
Hi, so today we want to share our Neighborhood Voices curriculum. These lessons are intended for practitioners interested in coordinating an inclusive youth-driven community engagement project. As we are all aware, there's a growing national interest in civic engagement, public participation, and youth leadership. So all we have to do really is turn on the news or look at social media, and we can see students interested in connecting with one another to create political change. Neighborhood Voices resources and lesson plans make national, quote-unquote, adult issues like environmental justice accessible to a youth audience. Those of us who work with young adults know that in order for them to be engaged, it takes kind of a different approach. That approach needs to be interactive, relevant, and model and foster current youth interests. In developing this curriculum and accompanying tools and resources, we had all of these ideas in mind. We're excited to share them with you, and we hope to hear from you all about your experiences using them with your students. So we have about 6 goals for today's webinar. One is that we really want to enhance or expand your existing knowledge, and we want to create almost a shared foundation or a common language. We hope that we can build your confidence so that you feel more aware, more confident, and better informed. And we want to invite you to share comments, observations, insights, and concerns. The work you're already doing is so inspiring, and we want to affirm you and thank you for what's happening already. We also want to encourage you to reach out for support and to adapt materials for your needs with support from Groundwork USA's TA program that comes at no cost to you. Here's what you can expect. Today we have an audience with a diversity of experiences and roles, all located in various geographic areas. Some people may have a more administrative background, while others have a more direct service or programming background. Given that there may be specific needs or requests, we want to recognize that we might not be able to tackle all the issues during such a short time period. We will be providing contact information and ways to find additional resources on our site at the end of the webinar. And finally, this webinar is really only a review, an overview. We recommend making time with your staff and colleagues to intentionally process, reflect, and discuss possible strategies that may be right for your organization. As with all of Groundwork USA's materials, this curriculum is informed by the users and continues to grow with your input. We ask that you consider it a work in progress, and we welcome your feedback.
Thank you, Alyssa. So let's start diving into this Neighborhood Voices project and curriculum. The project Neighborhood Voices was created to introduce a framework and best practices for community engagement. As we all know, every good community engagement process involves being flexible and customizing to the needs of the community being served. Generally speaking, the Neighborhood Voices project consists of getting the thoughts and opinions of the neighborhood while hiring and paying a group of teens to interview community members, identify trends, and share findings back to planners and the decision makers. We all know this involves much more than it sounds. So in response to hearing from our technical assistance clients and practitioners in the field, we created this Neighborhood Voices curriculum with guidance, resources, and lessons from managing a youth-driven community engagement project. Today we'll be diving into one section on this curriculum, but let's orient ourselves a little bit and zoom out. For those of you who are with us for the first Neighborhood Voices webinar, you'll recall that the Neighborhood Voices project framework is divided into 4 general phases. The first phase is about taking inventory. What do you want to do? Who are the people you want to talk to? What is your budget? The second phase is about planning, all those details and the timelines. How are you going to make it happen? Phase 3 is the training, teaching, and transferring of knowledge. And phase 4 is the presentation and sharing out of the findings. We view this curriculum as the connective tissue for all four of these phases. It is rich with tools and resources that guide a facilitator through these phases and offers tips and tools for an interactive community engagement project that is youth-led. Here you'll see the Neighborhood Voices curriculum overview. It's located on the Groundwork USA's website. The curriculum consists of 12 sections, from increasing base knowledge about community engagement, brownfields, and environmental justice, to getting youth out in their community to identify and view brownfield sites. Along the way of creating...
Hello? Stacy?
Yes.
This is Sandy. You're not advancing the slides. Give me 1 second. It was still under Kate. Okay, so there you go. You're all good now.
Great, thank you. So I'll backtrack a little bit because here you'll see the Neighborhood Voices curriculum overview, which is located on Groundwork USA's website that we shared with you all yesterday. The curriculum consists of 12 sections, from increasing base knowledge about community engagement, brownfields, and environmental justice, to getting youth out in their community to identify and view brownfield sites. Along the way of creating a community engagement project, your youth will be exposed to professional and personal development, including critical thinking, data collection and analysis, and of course, public speaking. Today, we will look at one of the 12 sections in this curriculum to provide you all with a better understanding of the tools embedded in this curriculum and its practical use. Section 5 of this curriculum prompts youth to explore what a community asset is, provides lesson plans on discovering assets existing in their community, and moves into a bit of orienting youth to what community engagement looks like and how it can be done in an inclusive, meaningful way. This experience will highlight strengths and resources in the community and potentially where there are gaps in resources available to your community. As you move through exercises outlined in this section and identify people, places, and services that contribute to the well-being and strengthening of your community, consider how these assets can be harnessed to meet the community needs. To begin strategizing with youth about your community assets and how to map these assets, we first need to establish a shared vision about what community engagement looks like. Let's look at Groundwork USA's Community Engagement Essentials to begin to think about community engagement as community engagement mapping. Kate is going to walk us through an interactive activity that is part of this curriculum.
All right, thank you, Stacy. So by way of background, you see an image here. And a little bit of context for it. So we developed this Community Engagement Essentials tool as a way to provide technical assistance clients as we were coaching them up. These are typically planners who are forming or retaining or working themselves as community outreach and engagement teams. We use this tool to help them get into a beneficial frame of mind to use in preparing for and doing their work. We like to create a variety of ways for people to tune in and learn information here at Groundwork. And this graphic illustration, developed for Groundwork USA by Philadelphia-based artist Rodney Camarse, is a visual and graphic representation of the messages we want to send about doing authentic, inclusive community engagement work. So we're mixing up learning styles here. We believe this might be more possibly accessible for visual learners, but now we'll have a chance to hear a more interactive or virtually interactive process and a conversation with you all to talk through what we see here, and it's a chance for us to hear from you. So using the chat box, and I know many of you have actively used the chat box given some of our technical hiccups, and I appreciate you sticking with us through those. I wonder if you might take a moment to type in your chat box and share with us this image and what you see in that image that jumps out at you. Describe a little bit about why and how it spoke to you, what it makes you think about, and we'll be monitoring the chat box to draw out some of your comments and discuss them here. So right here we've got a Community Engagement Essentials backpack, and it's got a whole bunch of gear on it, things that are filled to the brim with tools, supplies, a frame of mind. Some of it may be a little bit more difficult to see than others, but there's some really great stuff in there.
So I see Amy says it reminds her of getting ready to go back to school, and that's really what it says for me too. One thing I just want to pull out is the receptacles, and these are lenses that you'll need to approach this project. So I think sometimes our lenses, our view of the world can be distorted. Some people can have a rose-colored view, and other people might be wearing dark shades, so they have more of a darker view. And we're asking students to really have a clear-eyed, curious, and open frame of mind. And with these receptacles, they can be intentional about noticing other perspectives.
Great. We've got another comment here. The patches on the backpack remind me of scout badges, the ones that take time, engagement, and work to master. You got it. That's absolutely right. Also, the backpack stands out to me because it holds the tools. Also, the water bottle stands out with the sustainable label. We're dealing with water quality issues here in New Mexico, or water issues here in New Mexico. I like the unplug that is disconnected from the phone. Also a comment, everything is centered on the traditional nuclear family. I hear that. Thank you so much for the feedback. I didn't mention this at the beginning, but all of our tools and resources were really receptive to open feedback, and we'll continue to iteratively improve our tools, so we value your comments and your appreciation today.
I see that a few people have talked about the phone being unplugged. So important to really be clear in our communication with each other and to put technology aside. Someone else remarks that relationships with the family are at the center, and I think that relationships are something that we really talk about strongly.
Hey, Stacy, this is Sandy. I just want to let you know a lot of folks are commenting in the chat box to me. So for those of you that are putting your answers in the chat box, please post them in the Q&A toolbox. The chat box is specifically for if you're having a technical difficulties, you can post that in the chat box, but your answer should go into the Q&A toolbar. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. I was using the word chat box and should have said the Q&A. Appreciate that. So another comment about the shoes spoke to me with that text, the walk a mile in my shoes, a reminder that every individual's experience is unique. Absolutely. And a suggestion for color in the letters and words to make them stand out better. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Well, you all had a lot of the things that we wanted to draw out today. Elissa, I wonder if you might go through a couple of more specifics that you had, and Stacy, maybe you too.
Sure. So I want to point out for you the Create pencil that's in the pocket of the backpack. This really reminds me of the Harold and the Magic Crayon story. It's a children's book about a small boy who uses his imagination and his trusty crayon to create a world of wonder and amazement. And this is really a metaphor for what we're asking the students to do. We want them to be creative, imaginative, and innovative when it comes to finding solutions. So they may not have the possibilities in front of them, but they can still create the world that they would like to see.
And I'll direct everyone's attention to the backpack straps, the flexible and adaptable straps. We use our adjustable backpack straps to adapt to the load on our back, extending or tightening depending on the load for comfort. The flexible straps contour any body within the straps, and we should think about our approach to community engagement in this way, both in being flexible and adaptable to meet people, quote unquote, where they are, and in terms of project planning and execution, allowing for flexibility with the timeline and learning opportunities. Groups may find deep value in deep learning experiences in one particular section of your project. We encourage you to be flexible and respond to this need and create dialogue and allow for room for that.
Well put, Stacy. We've had a lot of activity in the Q&A box. Thank you so much. One more here. Kids have a lot going on. This backpack reminds me as much as adults, but we still expect more from them. And we can help them use their voice to guide the future. Great. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate your sharing your thoughts and your impressions. If you have other ideas that occur to you after today's webinar, we certainly welcome them via email, via phone call. But we welcome all that input. You'll have our contact information again at the end. So your feedback here today is very helpful, and we'll continue to inform future updates for our tools. Now I'll hand it back to Alyssa to dive into the lesson plan.
Okay, great. So to begin, I want to talk a little bit about little g and big G goals. So we can think of goals on a continuum. On the one hand, we want to help students think critically and give them options and opportunities to engage. That's the small g goal. On the other hand, we want youth to be at the center of decision-making and leading change, which could mean impacting policy. That's the big G goal, which could be a lifelong journey for some participants and students. Somewhere in the middle might be this idea that championing the environment happens locally as well as nationally and internationally. As Kate says, it's not just about the polar bears. It's also about the desire to change what you see in your neighborhood. There's the potential to transform a trash-strewn lot into a community garden. So those are two words that summarize the curriculum, potential and transformation. There's a parallel process happening here. The kids are thinking about the potential to transform their community and at the same time thinking about their own potential and their ability to transform by considering new ideas. If we refer back to the backpack illustration, we're asking the students to cultivate and strengthen the skills, understanding, and mindset needed to do authentic community engagement work. As educators, we're inspiring a generation to have a new awareness and develop and hone their leadership skills and strengths. We're also looking at the ways things have been done historically and seeking to make improvements. One of those opportunities for improvement includes encouraging a more diverse group of community advocates and environmental allies. I think we can acknowledge that the community planning process has its challenges. Rather than shying away from talking about some of these challenges, we want to prepare students to think critically and creatively about how things could be different. If you watch the TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story, we can see the risk of operating without including multiple perspectives. We want students to have an understanding of why it matters that multiple voices are included in the planning process. We want students to put on their respectacles or respectful lenses to build relationships and make connections beyond their classroom. In collaboration with Kate and Stacy, I created several lessons that complement the material already available. The lessons share some similar qualities: a basic introduction to the concept, a reflective question or thought, a group activity, and a brainstorming activity. The lessons touch on individual concepts, but also can be used more flexibly if needed. In addition to building a foundation for learning about environmental justice, there is a focus on relationships, healthy communication skills, and recognizing strengths. So in Lesson Plan 1, we're really talking about the planning process. And students can gain a better awareness of how decisions are made and their role in the planning process. They'll learn some of the challenges and benefits of working in groups and be able to identify the unique leadership skills that they can contribute to a team environment. In Lesson 2, Who is Impacted by Planning? Reframing Hard-to-Reach Populations, students gain a better understanding of the value of inclusivity and the impact of exclusion. Students learn simple, practical techniques for communicating authentically and respectfully in preparation for their interactions with community members and neighbors. In Lesson 3, What is Asset Mapping? Students gain an appreciation for the strengths and resources their community already possesses. Attention will be given to defining specific places, people, and organizations that have potential for partnership. Students also begin to imagine how these resources could be utilized for the benefit of the entire community. Lesson 4 talks about synthesizing data and preparing to share community feedback. Students analyze, evaluate, and make connections in order to better understand a community's needs and priorities. Students learn to not only interpret the information they've collected, but also to make compelling arguments based on the evidence. In Lesson 5, Community Engagement Essentials, the lessons emphasize an appreciation and recognition of lived experiences. Students gain a clearer understanding of the importance of soliciting the voices of all people. So we're going to walk through one activity together today. I'd like you to begin by identifying some assets that are specific to your community. I'm going to give you a few minutes to write into the Q&A and just list as many people, services, organizations, businesses, institutions, and spaces in your community as you can. That's a long list. And just write in your responses. So we're going to be brainstorming here, which means there's really no right or wrong answer. Spelling doesn't count. And we're just trying to share ideas, generate as long a list as possible. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes for that, and I'll read in your answers.
And while we're getting some comments in the chat box, I will remind you all that Groundwork USA has a tools and resources page you can visit from our website on our technical assistance page, where you can access the kinds of tools you're seeing here today, some particularly focused on asset mapping.
Okay, so I see someone's written in describing beautiful open spaces and public trails as one asset, homeowners are another asset, the YMCA, YWCA, the library, the Hudson River Museum, many restaurants and businesses could be another asset. An open space. Local, state, and federal government agencies, environmental and educational centers, community advisory groups, universities, residents, researchers, health centers, boys and girls clubs, the post office, the City of New Orleans, Claiborne Cultural Innovation District, Audubon Nature Institute, high school students, thank you for including them. Local youth employment agencies, fish ponds, outdoor gear companies that offer grants and donations. That's a great idea, thanks. Okay, so we have a pretty comprehensive list, and it continues to grow. I see people are also adding urban water partnerships and lots of automotive types of businesses. So while we're continuing to expand our list, I'm just going to ask another question. Is there anyone or anything missing? We've named lots of organizations, services, businesses, institutions, but let's reframe the definition to include anyone or any group that helps to improve the quality of community life. I'll give you 2 examples of what I'm trying to describe. Who is the person in your life who reaches out when it's time to celebrate an achievement? Is there someone who seems to know everyone and remember each person's name? Is there someone who's cool, calm, and collected in a crisis? Who do you turn to for support? So I'd like for you to think about your answers and add specific people to the list. And I'll give you a few minutes for that. So I see some other groups of people coming up now. Mentors. I see that Bob Irvin, the president of American Rivers, is included. The elders in a community who attend every mayor and council meeting, every event, every dance. The extended family, housemates, AmeriCorps members, teachers, neighbors, families. Volunteers and the executive director of organizations. So when you thought about it differently, you were probably able to identify lots of specific people or roles. Parents are even included in this list. These people may or may not have official titles or positions, but they're still community leaders and possess valuable skills, especially socio-emotional skills like relationship building. And it's important for students to remember that everyone, including them, and please add yourself to this list, has the potential to be a community asset. Everyone in the community has strengths, talents, skills, expertise, and knowledge. Everyone can be a force for community improvement. Similarly, spaces in a community can be seen in terms of their potential. With the right skills and effort, a weed-filled, garbage-strewn lot can be transformed into a community playground or picnic area. Being able to see the potential in people and places is important because seeing something as an asset can make it possible to turn it into one. You can notice that this exercise asks students to consider worth and recognize worth, their own and others. It asks students to have a really broad definition and to reconsider strengths in terms of human, cultural, institutional, and physical potential. The idea is for students to understand the complexity and challenge of creating change in their neighborhood. It's going to take a lot of resources to transform the environment, and it can't be done alone. As we wrap up, I'd like to ask you to reflect on your students. What strengths do you believe they bring to the table? What are their assets? I'd like for you to use the Q&A box to share your ideas, and there are a few included in the slide. Students have enthusiasm, curiosity, great social media skills. What else? What are they going to offer you and offer all of us? Uninhibited ideas, energy, connecting to people naturally. Thank you, Helen. Creativity. Absolutely. Hope, refreshing perspective, insight into current youth fads and trends, transparency and integrity. Students will not give you a politically correct answer. That is so true. They're very authentic. Technology skills, absolutely. They have grown up with technology in a way that's different from most of us, and they really have skills to connect with each other. So I think all of us can say that we're inspired by students, and we wouldn't be doing this work if we didn't feel hopeful and we didn't feel motivated by what they can bring to the table. As we end today, we just ask for any reflection. That's right, knowledge and passion, they do have that. any reflections, comments, or questions you might have about the entire process. And I think I'll turn it over to Kate now.
Thanks so much, Alyssa. So we heard a lot. Thank you so much for your comments and your thoughtfulness, and again, your patience with our digital venue here today. It's always a bit touch and go with technology over the web. We want to make sure that you know a couple things coming out of today. One, that this is very much an open source resource for you, so you should feel free to take, pick and choose what you want to use, what works for you, adapt as you see fit, replicate wherever possible, but that our offer remains ongoing for at least the next year and a half. We've got some time left in our technical assistance program to respond and particularly focus on an area of need or support that is meaningful to you. So particularly around engaging young people, if there is interest in technical assistance, in a particular sort of opening up an opportunity for new relationship or partnership building, if you're looking to find a youth-serving organization to develop this kind of a Neighborhood Voices program, or you're looking for a way to get a foot in the door with City Hall if you're a youth-serving program trying to build a partnership with City, we would love to hear from you and find ways to support you. So you're welcome to send a technical assistance request at any time. You can do that via our website. And you can also ask your question today. I know we did a thumbnail sketch of the curriculum and would love to hear more feedback if you'd like. So one question came in, how long it will take for me to go through this curriculum if I followed it all the way through. And I don't know if you've got another browser window open and you can kind of scroll through that. We've got several sections and we've got it broken out into about 12 sections. And the way that we originally conceived this project was over about an 8-week period. And so there was, sort of the teen group met a couple times each week in the after school hours. A couple Saturdays they met and did some of these lessons and some of these activities stretched out over that course of 8 weeks. So the list of exhaustive activities and lesson plans and resource links that you see here were not all employed in one 8-week engagement. So this could be as deep a dive as you want to go. It could be kind of a semester-long thing that you stretch out and integrate other elements to it. It could be something you pick and choose, and maybe there's just kind of a one-and-done lesson, something you find useful here. So it really can be customized depending on the needs and the context of your group and your project, and we can certainly help walk through that and figure out where is the best place to start.
And you'll see here just on our website, we have the entire curriculum embedded with clickable links to the resources, guides, and tools. It's really easy to follow and walk through, and it's just rich with a lot of resources.
Another question, does this curriculum have to be used to tackle environmental issues? It certainly doesn't. It was born out of a need to sort of focus on planning and community engagement related to brownfield redevelopment, but it certainly doesn't have to be that way. We did design it to support community engagement through a planning process, but really it's designed to support young people working together to gather a mandate of some kind from local stakeholders. To test ideas or concepts to figure out what project or should come next. So it's a way to really prioritize and even perhaps fundraise for some work in the future.
And Kate, I know I've heard a question asked about, what if, as the facilitator of a curriculum like this, I don't know anything about Brownfield? Where could I potentially turn for support in that?
Yes. It is definitely a very common question. If there is a sort of a Brownfields 101 slide deck that we use in a lot of our training of trainers. It's embedded within the curriculum up near the top, one of the first couple sections. So you could certainly brief yourself and get up to speed. You can also call us and we can walk you through that. If that's something, that's a very easy thing. We could set up a call and we could kind of walk through that PowerPoint slide deck with you. I suspect you know a lot more than you think you do, though.
Kate, another question people might have is how long will it take to go through the curriculum if it's followed all the way through?
Yeah, so I think, when Ann and I worked on this technical assistance engagement, we really roughed it out thinking it would be a 3-month process. And, we recognize that customizing and timing is everything. When we were working with the client in Portland, we started our engagement, the technical assistance request actually came in over the summer as the grant was just getting administered and the money was just unlocking from EPA. We actually didn't get started engaging the teams until early October, so we really ended up compressing a lot. We were concerned about coming into December, which is a time when people start traveling and sort of school gets out for that time of year. And so we wanted to make sure we could compress and get that agenda in there. So I would say ideally this would be something you'd stretch over 12 or even 14 weeks. It would be a perfect scenario that you are not just doing kind of a short-term blip on the radar screen, but that you're engaging teams deeply and building their knowledge and their teamwork and their sense of ownership about this kind of a project over a few months' time. There's also just a couple questions about if the presentation will be available. Yes, if you signed up for today's webinar, you're on our distribution list. We'll be sending out a link to the recording. And caveat that the beginning of the recording may have been challenging for some people to hear. I suspect the recording did capture all the beginning parts. So if you want to know a little bit more about Groundwork USA and our technical assistance program, if you were not able to hear the first few minutes this morning, you can visit our website, groundworkusa.org, and learn more about our technical assistance program. And a comment from Keithan. Thank you so much, Keithan. He says, brownfield sites are worth investigating, especially if your community is seeking economic development. Groundwork USA addresses these concerns with very innovative methods, such as photo voice. And if anyone's wondering what I mean when I say photo voice, it's an engagement tool designed to have young people, actually really anyone, but a group of people to go out and learn to take photographs using simple technology. It could be as simple as a disposable camera, although we don't recommend disposable things, being more sustainable, using a smartphone or other sort of a camera to take photos of sites that are meaningful in some way or provide some sort of a poignancy to the individual, and then having them develop their ideas and then presenting those in some sort of a community report out format. Just provides a visual way to represent a conversation, advance priorities, again, sort of that winnowing down and just bringing different people and voices around the table to collaboratively think about spaces in their community and how they could be used in different ways. Thanks so much, Keithan. So we just have a few minutes left. If you have one last question in the chat box, we'd love to hear about it. We've had really excellent success and energy. We've used pieces of this engagement. We've field tested in Milwaukee, in Baltimore and in Fresno through our technical assistance engagements over the past year or so. And we have been really overwhelmed with young people's energy. All the things that you all popped into the Q&A box around their energy, their vision, their transparency, their integrity, their insight into current trends, their refreshing perspectives, connecting to people in very authentic one-on-one ways. I would also add that many of our young people across the country are multilingual, bilingual. That's a really important skill set and a tool to connect with different kinds of people, particularly people who are not comfortable with English as a first language, and find ways to draw them out and get them involved too. So as our nation is changing, our young people, we see it every day in the news recently, but it's true that young people are our future. And so we are really excited to share this curriculum with you today and find ways to harness that energy of young people and keep moving our communities forward. So I invite you again, technical assistance requests. You can go to our website. You'll see our hot link there on this last page. And you can also explore and download our growing list of tools. Thank you so much for your attention today. We'll be monitoring the chat box for a few more minutes if you've got any other additional questions. Feel free to reach out to us via email as well. And special thanks today to my fellow presenters. Stacy and Elissa, thank you so much for your energy and your vision, creativity, getting this resource up on the web. And to our colleague Liz, who's invisible but also present today. She was instrumental in getting that loaded up onto the website. So all those hot links you see there, that was all time she spent coding. So we're really excited to share and welcome your feedback and input. We want to continue to make this tool better. One other question, does your staff members have a site we can go to and read or see the success stories from Brownfield sites? Keith and I welcome, if you want to send an email to us, I know you're in touch with Stacy, we could certainly bring some of those case study examples to you, some before and afters. We've got some of that in slide deck format. One other thing, on our reports page, you can also find, I'll see if I can get a link to it. We do have a Brownfields report that comes from the Groundwork USA, across the Groundwork USA network, but it's a variety of examples of ways that Groundwork Trusts have reclaimed brownfields for community benefit. And I'll make a note here to send a link to that report. We'll send a couple of different resources with this email and follow up to today's conversation. All right. Seems like the conversation is waning in the chat box. Thank you so much for spending your hour today with us. We know you're busy doing a lot of incredible work. Thank you for sharing your time and your thoughts with us. Thanks to everyone who participated on today's call. Thank you for enduring our technological challenges. Please take a moment to fill out an evaluation. We want to know what you learned and how we could do better next time. We welcome your TA requests and everything in between. Thanks so much, Alyssa and Stacey, and thank you all for participating. Have a good afternoon.